Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 25th of November. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Turning to politics, and the massive scope of the Israel Beitenu corruption scandal continues to grow, a day after scores of suspects were taken to Rishon LeZion's magistrate court for a remand extension. And there's plenty of political news as well, with veteran MKs quitting the business and some new faces joining. Here with more is Eli Walgelanter.
Good evening. Police are saying that they have state witnesses and incriminating evidence against some of the suspects and hard evidence against others, using insider information from someone who worked for months as an agent for the police and made secret recordings. The biggest name involved is Deputy Minister Faina Kirschenbaum, who is allegedly tied to numerous bribes. Kirschenbaum was released by police late last night after a 7-hour interrogation, but her daughter Ranit Kirschenbaum remained in custody on suspicion that she had accepted bribes along with her mother. An aide of Kirschenbaum's was also arrested this morning. Kirschenbaum was a high-profile member of Yisrael Beitenu and a close associate of Chairman Avigdor Lieberman. The bulk of the party's activities go through her, and she is involved in all its parliamentary and political moves. The investigation continues against numerous senior figures from government ministries, local councils, and sports associations who are suspected of complicity in bribery, fraud, falsifying documents, and breach of trust by funneling money to various organizations and foundations. In total, Rishon LeZion's magistrate court extended the remand yesterday of 24 suspects and released 4 to house arrest. Police today asked to extend the remand of 3 more suspects, including the Director General of the Ministry of Agriculture, Rami Cohen. Among those detained yesterday were the head of the Shomron Regional Council, Gershon Masika, and the treasurer of the Binyamin Regional Council, Efi Peles, who are both accused of bribery and accepting unspecified benefits. Also arrested were Tamar Regional Council Chairman Dov Litvinov, as well as Megillot Regional Council Head Mordechai Dachman. David Godofsky, the Chief of Staff for Kirschenbaum's Yisrael Beitenu party, is suspected of several counts of bribery. Other suspects include the Israeli Handball Association Chairman Doron Samchi, who is suspected of bribery and conspiring to commit a crime, and the Israel Basketball Association's former chairman, Avner Koppel, who is suspected of bribery, fraud, and falsifying corporate documents. The court also ordered former tourism minister Stas Misezhnikov of Yisrael Beitenu to be remanded in police custody for 8 days. Misezhnikov is a former Yisrael Beitenu lawmaker who served as tourism minister from 2009 to 2013. Investigators are looking into suspicions that he fixed millions of shekels worth of government tenders for large public events to benefit personal acquaintances, and is suspected of receiving bribes in exchange for the transfer of funds to various organizations while serving as minister. The scam worked like this. A certain organization received a budget plus a bonus amount with the understanding that the extra funds would either be kicked back to those pulling the strings or paid as compensation for appointing associates to certain positions. Police say that the massive bust had saved the state millions of shekels, since the illicit money transfers would have continued had the police not intervened. All told, there are currently 31 suspects in the case. Turning now to the elections, and we'll start with the new face. Former ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, has joined with Moshe Kachlon's new party, Kulanu. At a news conference yesterday in Tel Aviv, Oren, who was born in the United States and would be the 5th MK born in America if elected, said he is entering politics because Israel is at a critical junction. I couldn't look from the side and do nothing when Israel is under diplomatic attack. Kachlon presented Oren as the right man to fix Israel's image problems and deteriorating relationship with key allies. Michael Oren is the right person to handle this responsibility, said Kachlon. He proved that, even when there are disagreements, he can maintain close ties. Michael is the best in his field. Kachlon announced this morning a second member of his list, Israel Prize winner and social activist Eli Alaluf, who served on the Knesset Committee for Combating Poverty. As for veteran MKs leaving politics, Mayor Shitrit, the country's most veteran Knesset member, today became the 4th MK to resign from Tzipi Livni's Hatanua party. Shitrit has been active in politics for 30 years and was, at one point, a presidential candidate running against President Reuven Rivlin. But he, like other Hatanua MKs, has been said to be unhappy over Livni's pact with Yitzhak Herzog's Labour Party, which pushed several Hatanua MKs down the Knesset mandate list. Former Hatanua MKs Elazar Stern, David Sur, and Amram Mitzna have each announced their resignation from the party, leaving just Livni and former Environmental Protection Minister Amir Peretz on the Labour list, with Livni as number 2 and Peretz as number 8. Both Mitzna and Shitrit have made clear that they do not intend to join a different party, while Stern is reportedly in talks to join Yisrael Beitenu. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. Times of Israel editor David Horovitz says it's too early to determine how the Israel Beitenu scandal will impact the elections.
It's very early days, and it's being greeted predictably by Israel Beitenu with cries of a witch hunt and the accurate assertion that this happens every time. Every time there's an election, somebody from Israel Beitenu, I mean, Liebman himself, the party leader, was under investigation for years, and they always seem to flare up just before the elections. And therefore you wonder if the hardcore of the supporters of Israel Beitenu will say, well, we know they're always trying to bring them down, like they used to say about Shas and Aryeh Deri, and therefore they won't be affected. But still, you tend to think it's not going to do them any good. You tend to think that if the police have decided, with, of course, the approval of the Attorney General, to start arresting people with clear political consequences at the height of an election campaign, the police and the Attorney General must feel that the evidence is pretty serious. And therefore, if this turns out to be quite a dramatic and drastic corruption case, it's not going to do that party a lot of good.
But can't one say, in fact, it is a little bit odd that this keeps happening all the time in an election cycle, and this man and his party is targeted time after time, and the timing, therefore, of this arrest taking place now, when they've been investigating for a year and could have made arrests perhaps a month ago, 2 months ago, is a little bit strange.
Okay, I mean, the police account is that they had no way of knowing that the coalition was going to collapse 3 weeks ago, and they had planned the dutiful process of this investigation, and they had their evidence to collect, and then they were going to make their arrests, and that's what they decided they had to do as planned, even though an unexpected election came along and made it look political in a way that the police will insist, of course, that it's not political, and they're just doing our jobs, and that the people of Israel should be very grateful that the police are doing their jobs.
And the effect on the general electorate, swaying the votes of an undecided voter who thinks perhaps this might have been a party I'd support, and now, ooh, it's tainted, it has a little bit of schmutz, and I'm not sure I want to go that way.
Look, I think in any case, I think there are two sort of contradictory factors that are pressing on the electorate in this regard. On the one hand, they want fresh-faced politicians because there's a concern that habitual politicians, if you like, can become corrupted, and we saw in the last elections a higher than usual ousting of veteran Knesset members and entry of new ones. Set against that, of course, the concern about inexperience of too many new politicians. But I think these kinds of affairs, they wear away at people's faith in their political leaders. They produce a sense of national dissatisfaction. You tend to think they help fresher parties and people without political baggage, but at the same time, you set against that. You can't keep throwing everybody out every 2 years, not even every 4 years, right? Because another group have disappointed you.
Joining us now to discuss the newest political scandal is attorney Michael Parham from the Movement for Quality Government. Thank you so much for coming in, as always.
You're welcome.
The movement is already calling for all of the people questioned in the latest affair to be fired or removed from public jobs. Why is that? They haven't been convicted. They haven't even been formally charged with any crime.
Well, I don't believe we've called for them to be dismissed or terminated. We simply state that they should take a leave of absence while the investigation is undergoing. One of the fears during an investigation is that those who maintain their positions of power will be able to somehow influence the course of the investigation, especially now that the investigation is a public one and is known. Until now it's been a secret investigation, but now that it's public and everybody knows about it, and certainly those who have maintained positions of power have at least the opportunity to unduly influence the investigation.
But that is in effect convicting them before they've been brought into court even.
No, if you're in, for instance, you as a public employee, if once any suspicion is being investigated against you, under the rules governing the employment of public employees, you would take a leave of absence and pending the results of the investigation. If the investigation comes up with nothing or clears your name, you come back to your job. So the idea is not to, how shall I say it, affect negatively your rights as an employee, okay, but to simply ensure that the investigation is conducted in a fair and impartial manner. And in this case, I just would add, we also call for the police and the authorities to move as rapidly as possible, because for everybody involved, it's a delay of justice, and the public, and even especially those people under investigation, have a right to know if they're going to be charged or not. So we really urge the authorities to move as rapidly as possible.
Michael, the timing of the arrests must be brought into question so soon before elections. What would you say to those who claim a police vendetta against Israel Beitenu?
I would say that it's preferable that we know about these acts before the election rather than learning about them after the election. An informed electorate is a key to successful elections, and in the balance, we feel that the police has done the right thing. If it is true that the investigation has been ongoing for an extended period of time, and I might add that since we're talking about the funneling of public funds to gain for private gain, the the temptation prior to an election becomes even greater, because you're not only helping line your own pockets, but you're helping buy votes and buy support. And so therefore, this kind of activity should be dealt with as soon as possible, and certainly prior to an election and not afterwards.
Michael, but it's no secret that there's no love lost between the police superintendent Danino and public security minister Aronovich from Israel Beitenu. There's also a great deal of corruption recently exposed involving the police. Is it not possible that the police are politically motivated?
Well, personal motivation I wouldn't rule out. And that is why we have a system of checks and balances. That's why the police activities certainly should be subject to review, and it's the Attorney General ultimately will decide whether to go ahead with the prosecution or not. I think any short-term perhaps satisfaction that somebody may get for trying to besmirch somebody's name will be canceled out in the long run as these checks and balances come into place. So on the whole, we cannot discount personal motivations, and certainly people are people, and they have their own axes to grind. So that's always a constant issue to be dealt with. But there is a system of checks and balances, and I might add that it's easier to reduce and to limit these foreign influences from an investigation when the investigation is public rather than private.
Michael Parham from the Movement for Quality Government, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure, and may I remind us that next week we are having our annual conference and award ceremony, so we see the cup not only as half empty, but there are many, many wonderful people doing great jobs, and we try every year to find these outstanding people and give them awards. And so the Michlelet Sapir and the Sapir College down in Sderot, we have our ceremony next week.
We'll invite you back to tell us about those winners, and on this optimistic note, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
The IDF soldier who was critically wounded in yesterday's exchange of gunfire between the IDF and Palestinian terrorists along the Gaza border has made slight improvement. Officials at the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba say that the soldier's condition has stabilized and he is now conscious and receiving treatment in the intensive care unit. The soldier is in the Bedouin tracking unit and was guarding workers on the security barrier in the vicinity of Kibbutz Nirim and Nir Oz when he came under sniper fire. The head of the Hamas surveillance unit was killed, and 2 other Palestinian gunmen were wounded in the Israeli return fire. Israel has quietly returned the bodies of the 2 terrorists responsible for the Har Nof synagogue massacre last month, Hassan and Uday Abu al-Jamal, who murdered 4 rabbis and a police officer in the attack, were buried in a Jerusalem Arab neighborhood. The bodies had been withheld as a deterrent against future attacks. The Jordanian government said it will take every necessary step to secure the release of its pilot captured by Islamic State fighters after his aircraft came down in northeast Syria during an air raid over the province of Rakul. He is the first captive taken from the U.S.-led coalition battling the jihadi group.
Right from the beginning that this is going to be a continuous and long war, and we think that we have a duty to defend our country and our region from this wave of terrorism. So Jordan will continue in its fight against terrorism, and we know that we will win at the end, because this is the right thing to do, and this is for the sake of our security and stability of this country.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon issued a statement urging Islamic State to treat the captured pilot humanely.
The Secretary General calls on his captors to treat the pilot in accordance with international humanitarian law, Obviously, the Secretary General is following the situation very closely in the continued armed conflict in Syria and deeply concerned with the continued use of violence across the country.
2 bodies were found overnight in a burnt-out car on farmland near the Nesher Power Station on Route 6 near Ramla. The area where the car, a black BMW, was found is on land owned by a man from the north who is reportedly well known to police. Detective opened an investigation into the incident. The bodies have been transferred to the Abu Kabir Forensic Institute for identification. A new archaeological finding uncovered at the Herodian National Park delivered a surprise, attesting to the genius of one of the history's great builders. More in this report from IBA's Norit Finger.
Archaeologists from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem have recently discovered an elaborate entryway into the Herodian Palace situated at the Herodian National Park in the Judea Desert. The excavated passageway enabled the monarch and his entourage to go directly to the courtyard of the fortress. The 20-meter-long and 6-meter-wide entryway consists of an impressive system of arches spanning 3 separate levels designed to buttress the massive walls. Archaeologists explain that the supporting arches enabled the preservation of the corridor to a height of 20 meters. However, the passageway was never actually used for its original purpose. During the excavations, it became apparent to archaeologists that Herod had decided to convert the whole hilltop complex into a massive mausoleum for himself when he dies. The arched corridor was then filled with earth during the construction of the royal burial monument, as were all the other structures built by Herod on the hill slopes. The excavation of the arched corridor will now allow visitors direct access to the Herodian Palace fortress, as it could have served Herod 2,000 years ago. This is Norit Finger for IBA News.
And thousands of Christian pilgrims flocked to the ancient biblical town of Bethlehem last night for the Christmas Eve celebration at the traditional birthplace of Jesus. The central manger square was decked out in colorful lights and a towering Christmas tree. It was a cold night, but with a carnival atmosphere, as scout troops played bagpipes and horns, while bands from around the world performed on stage singing Christmas carols. The sound of bells filled Manger Square as religious and political leaders arrived to take part in the celebrations. Christian pilgrims said they enjoyed the festive atmosphere.
Well, I feel it's very special. I'm Christian, and being there for me is very special because, well, the atmosphere is very different, and you can feel the Christianity of people.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas arrived in the city to attend midnight mass and delivered holiday greetings, saying he hoped for a year of peace in the region. As is the tradition, midnight mass was conducted in the Church of Nativity, and the service was beamed by satellite to televisions around the world. The Latin Patriarch Fuad Tual conducted the service and also read out a message of solidarity from Pope Francis to Christians in the Middle East. In Israel, Christmas celebrations focused on the city of Nazareth, revered as the hometown of Jesus and the Virgin Mary. A few thousand Christians gathered in the main square opposite the Church of Annunciation. There were marching bands, dancers wearing colorful animal costumes, and clergymen walking in procession toward the church, where worshippers believed that Mary was told by the angel Gabriel that she would give birth to the Son of God. Christian pilgrims expressed their excitement over being in Nazareth for the holiday.
I have come to Nazareth today to celebrate the birth of Jesus, and since this is where it all started, we thought we'd start at the beginning.
Just a few hours from now, the film The Interview will have its Christmas Day opening in 300 U.S. independent theaters. The move follows Sony's decision to backtrack on its decision to withdraw the film after being hacked and threatened, allegedly by North Korea. The film is a lowbrow satire that depicts a fictional plot to assassinate North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Due to security concerns, multiplexes and corporate chains are passing on the film, but the independents say they are not scared off by the threats.
We've been working really closely with local law enforcement officials, as have almost all of the other theaters in the art house convergence, a network of independent and art house theaters. So we've been taking their feedback into advisement, and we're confident that everything is going to be fine when the film opens on Christmas Day.
Yishai Uliel is only 14, but he's already a world champion. He's considered Israel's wonder boy of tennis, and this week he won the Orange Bowl tournament in Miami for the second time. He became only the 9th male to ever do so, joining such illustrious names as Roger Federer and Andy Murray. The 53rd Junior Orange Bowl International Tennis Championship hosted nearly 1,500 players from more than 74 countries, including the best 12 and under and 14 and under players in the world. Uliel beat Chen Zhaohu 7-5, 7-5 in the final. The teenager from Ramla began playing tennis at the age of 5, only because his sister refused to babysit him, and his shelf is already full to the brim with trophies. Hapoel Tel Aviv basketball team has a new home to play in. Built over the past year and a half with an investment of 100 million shekels, the new arena sits at the site of the old Tel Aviv Drive-In. There are 3,400 seats, 4 dressing rooms, an exercise center, a press center, and VIP room in the new venue, which replaces the mythological Usishkin basketball hall. Tel Aviv Mayor Ron Huldai, who initiated the tearing down of Usishkin 7 years ago to the dismay of many longtime Hapoel fans, and the construction of the new court, cut the ribbon at the arena and placed the traditional mezuzah at the entrance. The debut game for Hapoel Tel Aviv in their new home will be against Hapoel Jerusalem on January 4th. Taking a look at local finance, and the shekel remains the same with no foreign currency trading, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were mixed on the last day of the trading week. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather forecast, and no change in temperatures over the weekend. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this evening. I'm Laura Cornfield. Aaron Viner will be here tomorrow with all the latest news from Israel and abroad. We wish our Christian viewers a Merry Christmas, a great weekend, and Shalom from Jerusalem.